Really, really excited for Cory to come out and speak with us. I'll read you his bio, but all you really know is this guy's a freaking master, and he's good at what he does, and he's a smart man, and he's from Utah. We had a speakers dinner last night, and we introduced everybody, so the board and the speakers, just a little intimate setting to kind of prep for today. And I didn't actually realize this, but it just shows the power of this community. Cory's first speaking opportunity was with DMC about 1.5 years ago, and it has launched him in a trajectory that has he's been killing it, speaking all over the world, not just in the US, and we're glad to have him back in Utah with us today. Please put your hands together for Mr. Cory Henke.
Hello, hello, hello. Everybody can hear me? Awesome. As was mentioned, I wanted to start off with this image. And this is an image of me in 2017 for the SLC SEM, which is now the Utah DMC. Since then, I've been able to speak all over the US, Peru, the UK, and I'm just so stoked that this community continues to grow. And I just owe so much of my career, the agency that I've built and everything that I've done, a lot of it to the DMC. So if anybody's ever interested in speaking, I think this is a great place to start. But again, why did we come here today? My first presentation that I did for the Utah DMC, I said that the most valuable impression on the web was YouTube. 2.5 years later, I'm presenting because the most valuable impression on the web, in my opinion today, is Instagram stories. And it's on me to sit here and prove it to you. And so in this first section, we're gonna talk about the why I believe in Instagram stories. In the middle section, we'll talk about some of my Utah clients and how they're awesome and a few of their case studies. And then we'll round it out with some strategies and tactics that I think are really good if you're looking to get into Instagram stories or you're really looking to maximize your potential. So the place that I want to start first is 2 extremely good purchases by 2 of the big players in the game. Google buying YouTube for $1.65 billion, and more importantly, Facebook buying Instagram for only $300 million in cash and $700 million in stock. And according to Bloomberg and Luxy, these companies are now worth $75 billion and $100 billion. Like, these are some amazing purchases. But what we're here today is to talk about stories. And so here's a little timeline of how Instagram started in 2010. And then now today, we're now launching with IGTV and shopping. But in my opinion, we have to look at what Facebook is telling us, right? The story format will surpass the feed in 2019. The story format is the main format of content creation and communication across social media platforms. So what does that mean? Is Facebook really telling us the truth? Well, YouTube made the investment, right? You got to think about this. YouTube doing stories is absolutely crazy. I'm waiting to see stories now in our Google SERPs. And while that sounds crazy, I didn't think YouTube was going to take this jump. And they actually did it. This is mind-boggling to me. But it's all because Facebook, with Instagram and WhatsApp and now Messenger, ate Snapchat's lunch. They literally crushed them. And it's because if you look at the launch of Facebook in 2004, and all the data they've been able to gather from us in that top chart through 2016, they're now leveraging that on stories. And so why wouldn't we leverage their vast amount of data in what is, I think, is a really good freaking ad unit that is stories? So let's jump right into it. But another thing that I want you guys to see is that Facebook has developed a lot of different products. Marketplace, watch, gaming, IGTV, IG shopping. Nothing has been impactful like stories has. And that's why they continue to move it across all their properties. This isn't like, something simple. They see something that works, they're gonna expand on it. And so understand that as we get in, but let's really get started in terms of me proving to you why Instagram stories is where to be today. So first thing we're gonna start off is just creative and engagement. And I think this slide really goes to a lot of our user behavior. How many of us hold our phone in vertical? How many of us watch video vertically? Well, there's a study done by Movi that says 90% of us hold our phones vertically, and 83% of us don't turn our phones to watch video. I find myself doing this a lot on YouTube, but this is how we hold our phones, and I think Video conferencing had a bit of an impact in terms of how we use our phones and why we keep them in vertical. So keep that in mind as we go through this presentation. The next place that I want to look at is all the different placements and opportunities we have with IG Stories. You can start with an image. You can then move to a carousel, where you have two types of carousel. You have a native carousel, you have an expandable carousel, which we'll get into on the next slide. But then from a video perspective, you have up to 1:20, with those first 3 seconds being the most important. So let's talk about that carousel comparison. First, you've got native, and that's in this first image, and you have 3 different slide cards. And it's important that when you do a native carousel, that you convince a user to tap. And I'll get into why you want them to tap a little bit later. But that native carousel is great, but make sure that they use that tap button. If you want to include up to 10 carousel slides, a user is going to have to click that keep watching button, right? So how do I get them to click that keep watching button? I got to show them something exciting. I got to entice them to continue on that journey through these different carousels. This next slide, we're going to look a little bit about, we're going to look at video. And so let me stop here, and if we could play the Golden Coil review video. This review video that they're going to play is from a close client of mine, and when we watch this, I want us to think about an Amazon 5-star review, a Facebook review, and now what I want you guys to see is the story review.
Oh, and by the way, my planner came in.
Just got this beautiful planner. It's my new planner from Golden Coil.
Ooh, but it's from Golden Coil. It's completely customizable. This is the 2nd year.
Thank you, Golden Coil. Thank you.
Here it is, my Golden Coil calendar, and I love the way it looks.
Deep, deep love for Golden Coil.
I'm one of those people where if I don't have a written planner, I cannot plan a thing.
The planners come in these beautiful keepsake boxes.
And here's mine. Basically, you just customize the whole thing.
In addition to custom planners, they also offer custom notebooks.
I'm so freaking excited!
I hear laughs. I hear joy. It feels like somebody saw something that they've never really seen before, right? How do you do a review like that? What it does is it hits here. And that's kind of the power of video and a lot that's being talked about today. But this type of review, when we compare that to seeing an Amazon 5-star review, seeing a lot of the text reviews that we see, I think this is going to be what is impactful. You'll see it again here, and you'll also see another example from Chanel. And I have some quick bullet points here. Oh, I'm sorry. This thing's going faster than this. And what I want you to see is that, like, you're seeing the same Golden Coil review, but also next to it, Chanel is able to take advantage of some of the filters within Instagram. And so making what you build native to the platform, I think, is so important when running story ads. So a lot to think about here, but this is great from a video perspective in terms of examples. On the next slide, you'll begin to see even more examples. The first one taking advantage of the progress bar. The second one using location tags, and you can also use hashtags to get into conversations to also increase your organic reach. The third one looking at the ability to pause, right? To pause and interact. And then lastly, giving them a good example or preview of what they can get when they swipe up. So again, just some examples to understand that the video capabilities are vast. Don't let your creative team tell you, we're out of ideas, I don't know what to do. It's endless, guys. It's endless in terms of what you can do. So the next area that I want to talk about is super important because we have all the creative, we have all these different assets that we can use, we have a bunch of examples, right? But what makes them important? In my opinion, it's engagement retargeting. Leveraging engagement, in my opinion, is far better than leveraging an interest in behavior. I can know what you're interested in, but if you've engaged with me, I feel like I have another level of just, a one-to-one connection with you, but also Facebook has been able to give us the ability to retarget. And so you can click everyone that's ever been to my Instagram, anybody that's associated with an ad, somebody that's just sent us a message. But if you look inside that black box and you start to see anybody that likes, comments, saves, but also carousel swipes, they just need to swipe on your carousel, and now you can retarget them. I want us to start comparing this engagement retargeting to our web retargeting. Which one is going to be more profitable at the end of the day? We have to be researching both and comparing both of those things. So this next one looks at an example. You'll see me click the profile there at the top, and then you'll see the call to action at the bottom. which I'm also going to click, that's number one. You have a minimum 3 engagement points when you run a story ad. You have the profile, you have the direct message, which is next, and then also you have the call to action URL at the bottom. That's a minimum 3 engagement points. If you add in a carousel, you now have a carousel swipe that you can retarget off of. If you add in a video, they don't even have to engage, because at 3 seconds, at 50%, at 95%, you can retarget all those users. And then we all know that we can do polls inside of Ads Manager. We can also send out, and that creates another level of engagement, but also consumer research when we do those polls. If we ask questions, we not only get engagement retargeting, but we also get to understand something about our brand, which are both very important. So, talked about creative. We talked about engagement retargeting. This is what I think is probably the biggest thing with stories that I've seen in the past year, is pricing and scalability. We're going to start off with a little bit of organic first. We run organic for a few of our clients, and this was something that we noticed almost immediately. From about June 1st to June 26th, we saw that we could get maybe about 50,000 impressions, right? And then on the right chart, you can see when we launched stories in late June, what that did to our impression volume. Our organic impression volume jumped up 4 to 6 times by just doing more stories. I wonder why. It's probably a user behavior that we can all look at and say, wow, we watch a lot more stories than we do scrolling through our news feed. So something to definitely think about. And this is backed up by research. You'll have this deck so you can click these links, but Buffer did a research study and looked at the domination of stories. And they see that it's crushing the news feed in terms of impression volume, in terms of how people are using it. But what's more important is the chart to the right, where it shows that posting stories doesn't necessarily correlate with a negative reaction, with a oh my God, there's too many stories. It's almost like we're looking for them. It's almost like we like them. And I'm sure all of us that use Instagram in here have seen people that post 30 stories a day, 60, and it's just like, I can't go through all that. Like, that's a lot. Like, why are they doing that? Well, there's a couple of people that are watching them because they continue to do it. And it's also helping with the algorithm. I'll give you guys an example. I don't click on ads. My girlfriend clicks on tons of ads. She gets an ad every 3 stories. I get an ad every 10 stories. It's interesting that if you poke the bear's going to poke right back. So another thing when I talk about stories, and thanks to AdStage Q2 2019 report, they came out and listed all these different awesome placements that I use and the pricing associated with them. I wanted to go ahead and put stories up against YouTube to kind of show you why I would pick stories over YouTube today. And the first big thing is the full screen experience, guaranteed. There's no swipe up for a full screen experience. I get that full screen, all your attention. Also, no distraction. A couple of call to actions in the right places, but they're going to do something for me anyways if you click them, but no distractions in my stories. Multiple ad units. I get reach, I get engagement, the audience targeting, and most importantly, in my opinion, that we don't talk about, the attribution within Facebook and Instagram and how good it is because users are logged in versus not being logged in. That, I think, is one of the secret sauces to Facebook and Instagram. And then also, when we just look at CPMs, sorry guys, I'm a weak pusher. When we start to compare the stories in the newsfeed and we look at CPMs, what I find between the stories and the newsfeed is I get more reach with stories. I get that full screen experience that I talked about, but the cost efficiency, right? And I'm leveraging this new ad unit that's cheaper, but I still have all of Facebook's data. I can still leverage the biggest and most powerful data sets with such an awesome ad unit. So why wouldn't I take advantage of that? But ultimately, in this why section of why stories, this is what I believe we really have to start thinking about. We have to start to rethink, not just for message, headline, body, and text, but more of an overall feeling that lingers. I feel like we're moving back to the impression, where for us to purchase something, we're going to go through a variety of steps to purchase, and I got to make sure that those impressions count, whether that's organic and paid. I think this is going to be the future. So hopefully that gave you a little bit about the why in terms of Instagram stories, and I'm excited to show you some case studies, because my case studies for Golden Coil, Lulu, and Gather, these are all Utah companies. I'm so blessed to be able to work with these guys, and you know, They're just awesome people, and I'm really thankful that they allowed me to come here and bring some of this data to you guys. So what Golden Coil is, they're a custom planner and notebook. They're awesome. Everybody should try them out. But the goal was to test with just a small amount and to see if ads could work for them. And the solution was really leveraging just story ads. It was very efficient to do that. And the success was the fact that we sold them out in less than 10 weeks. But if you look at those hurdles in that last section, there was no way to convert on the mobile device. There was no previous history, right? Those are two things that you probably need to have success. And so I was a little worried at first, but I'm gonna walk you through a custom Power BI dashboard that we built and how we really shifted our focus to drive success for the brand. So if you could play the Power BI video. You're looking at 3 sections here.
Similar to the previous dashboard, this dashboard looks a little different and has 3 different areas. You have the ad spend allocation area, here to your left. You have the platform and placement comparison, which shows your usual bar chart as well as our table below. And then you have audience comparison here to the right. And so what we wanted to focus on with this case study is really looking at the placement and device comparison. And so we'll drill down to look at the week over week. And what I really want us to focus on is that in week 1, what is our allocation? And I'm going to drop this down so we can see stories versus the feed. But in week 1, we can see that our allocation is mainly in the mid, primarily on Facebook, and really in the news feed. By week 2, we begin to see where the value starts to show. And I'm looking here at the CPM, the reach, and comparing against Facebook. But again, our separation is only 55%, about 50% in the newsfeed. By week 3, we begin to see a large change where my CPCs are extremely low, my reach continues to get better, and the newsfeed continues to get more competitive. As we get into week 4, you see a continued separation where now stories make up 80% of the total, and we are heavily investing in the top. By week 5, we evened out a little bit, but we are most efficient. Here at a $1 CPM, 20 cents CPC, and a 2-to-1 return on ad spend. And then as we move to week 6, as we reach our height in terms of impression volume, we've now reached over 4 million people for about $5 grand at a $1 CPM.
Like, I really do. Reaching that many people?
As we back out and look at the entire campaign, another thing that we can look at is that if I click stories here, you begin to see that the majority of the inventory was at the top and primarily dedicated to our interest and behavior and lookalike, which performed exactly the same. I think what's interesting is that if we want to look at our retargeting.
Thank you. As we look directionally, we can see that when we launched in October through November, that when you look at Google Trends, you can see that we really elevated the brand. And in my opinion, it was all about the reach. Like, you guys saw the CPMs. Those are very hard to do on something like Facebook. And so we were able to execute for them. And if you watch the story that's playing, it's the 2 sisters that started this company. Amazing people, like I said. But stoked to be able to work with an awesome brand like Golden Coil. Next, and what will be a little bit different, is a case study on Lulu & Company. So they make swaddles, gowns, blankets for baby. And the goal was growth, like it is for anybody in Q4 2019. But what they really wanted to understand was, is Instagram or my website a better place to drive a user, right? And so what we did was we started to use stories to analyze that, because we know that we get these for cheap, and we know that we can drive a lot of volume. So the first thing that we did was we started to boost things within the app, and that gives us the Visit Instagram profile call to action there at the bottom. And what I want us to think about is, like, of these 3 creatives, which one do we think drove the best engagement, right? Was it 1 that looks at, more of a behind the scenes? Was it 2, more of a product demonstration? Or was it 3, a little bit more face to camera, right? Like, which one of these really drove the best engagement? And what we found was that face to camera really works well. And another thing that we noticed was that when I was driving people to my profile, it cost 4 cents. If 12% of people go from the profile to the web, that's a 32-cent website visit. If my average cost per click is $1, but if I send them to Instagram first and I'm getting a 32-cent cost per website visit, that's fairly efficient. I need to start analyzing, the type of traffic that's coming in. And so this was an interesting find for us because the impression to the web is like what we always see, about 1%, but the profile to the web at 12%, it's fairly interesting. Now, in boosting in the app, there's a lot of limitations, right? The objective is the traffic campaigns. They're not conversion campaigns, which is important to know. The audience, you don't have the ability to use custom audiences. And the ads manager, you also limited in terms of like what you can see when you boost a story inside the app. So there are limitations, but the results really speak for themselves. And so in looking at this case study, we have to ask ourselves, where should we be driving new users? Is it the home of our product where people are going to shop, our storefront? Or is it our Instagram, the home of engagement? And the thing that I want us to start to think about is the fact that if you post a blog post, right? If we go ahead and post a blog post today, who sees it? Who sees it, right? Like, you have to drive people to see your blog post. If I post something on stories, a percentage of my fans, a percentage of my followers are going to see it every single time. There's a daily opportunity to reach your fans, and I don't think we're all taking enough of an opportunity to take advantage of that. And lastly, in working with Gather, we were able to do a Facebook case study as well as, this lives on Instagram as well. And they said the impact of Facebook and Instagram on our business in one word is growth. And I can agree with them. I see it across so many different accounts, but I would continue to work with Facebook. Facebook has been a great partner for us, and the case study is a huge badge of honor. But let's get into some of these strategies, right? I talked about the why. I talked about why I love stories. I showed you a few case studies that are close to my heart that I think bring value from stories. And so I'm going to show you kind of like some strategies that I look at. The first one being looking at the 4 pillars of Instagram. If you can just win in 2 of these, I think you've got a business. If you can win in 3, I think you're crushing it. I rarely see people crushing it across all 4, but if you want to take the opportunity to do it, I think you can build a brand very, very, very quickly. So when we think about the customer journey map on Instagram, there's a lot of different ways that you can look at it. Building awareness, right? Building your brand. How do you do that? Well, consistency. Profile, feed, and stories ad. Looking to get into that Explorer page by using hashtags and getting people to engage. Next is consideration, going a little bit deeper, right? If you hate e-commerce like my friend Michelle over here, she'd probably like to do a lead ad, right? Strengthen your connections with IGTV, getting more face to camera. And then you can inspire action with your feed and your stories with all the creative opportunities that I gave you in the first part of the presentation. Something I hear a lot is, well, I don't know what to do from a content standpoint. I don't know what to post in my stories. What am I supposed to do? There's tons of content types. I just, brought out a few. But there's so many if you just do the research. The one I have highlighted here is the repost. This is something that's very unique, where you can repost other people's content in your category. If you know your fan base, if you know who follows you, you know what they're gonna like. So repost other people's content. They might repost your content. This is a sharing world and a sharing community, and there's a huge opportunity to really repost not only your own, but other people's content as well. This is where I've seen a lot of really great things happen. And then when we think about stories, right? Besides video and photo, you have a lot that you can do. You can do just a text type, that's a story. Do a super zoom, that's a story. Do a live and cut a little piece of it, put it in there, that's a story. Do a rewind, do a hands-free. The boomerang is one of the easiest ones of all time. Like, these are very, very easy to do things that I think we forget about. When we're sitting there like, well, I don't know what to post. This is where I see the majority of the brands fail. If I'm going to be honest with you, this right here, it's playing inside that safe zone. Like, this is one that I can't tell you how many times I'm just like, oh man, everybody needs this slide. Because getting in the way of a call to action could be a bad user experience for somebody. Leveraging a tool like this, staying in the safe zone, making sure your content is right there front and center very quickly, first 3-5 seconds, That, I think, is the way to win. New feature alert. New feature alert, right? The Instagram Explorer ad, okay? This is coming if it's not already here. Again, I'm sure there's some people in here that get things a lot sooner than even I do. And so people will get it later. But being able to be on the Explorer page, what is this gonna be like? How is this gonna be targeted? This is going to be very interesting in terms of ads and how we target users and how we convert users in the future. I think this is going to be a great upper to mid funnel tactic that many will take advantage of. But this is great. Instagram continues to expand. Kind of reminds me of Facebook 2013, 2014, 2015. So when we look at Facebook, and I'm going to introduce you to one of the biggest changes I've seen in Instagram probably in the past month. Caused me to change my presentation, by the way. So thank you for letting me turn that in a little bit late. The Facebook Boost started in 2012. That's when they were able to allow you, any post that was on your Facebook page, you were now allowed to promote. And that's when we started to see all these likes, all these comments and go, wait a second, is it organic or is it paid? Are they really that good? I don't know. But the unique thing about the Boost is that you get more social proof now on your organic posts. Your posts can now be used with custom audiences. You can send them to a retargeting audience, you can send them to a CRM, and you can build a lookalike and still target these users. And then you found a stronger focus on the page. Remember when we started to build this Facebook page and go, okay, let's add reviews to it. Okay, all these widget companies, let's add this widget, let's add that widget, right? We made that Facebook homepage like, oh wow, a lot of people are gonna come here. Where is that today? It's not as important as it was. And so what we found recently is that now your Instagram organic posts are now available in Ads Manager. I believe this is one of the biggest changes to Instagram that I've seen probably in using the platform. Because what does that do? That increases your organic post reach and the social proof associated with it. And now you can really have some strong engagement when people go to your profile and check you out. Lookalikes, retargeting in CRM, but where are the stories? The stories didn't make it into this update. I wonder why, right? It makes you ask that question. And it also makes you ask the question when you see these posts in your newsfeed and they've got 10,000 likes, 1,000 comments. Wait a second, is it organic? Or did they pay for that? Very similar to how we saw it in Facebook. So I'm gonna close this thing out. I've got 4 different points for us. The first thing is engagement is the new currency. I really believe in this, that when somebody engages, that is worth far more to me than a lookalike at 1% or 10%. The vertical format, I would continue to learn this. Like, I feel like I see creative struggle a lot with this vertical format. And I would tell them to jump right in, test things, open up your phone. Let's get good at this. Because there's some awesome content like I showed you with that golden coil example. And then organic social is alive on Instagram, specifically in stories. And so how do we take advantage of that? And then the last thing, which I think is most important, we have to rethink for the impression, not necessarily the click. Because things are moving too fast, we're swiping too quickly. We got to be able to brand people and understand that, like, okay, that was an impression, they understand it, they're gonna come back and visit me, and Google's probably gonna get the credit. That's fine. And lastly, this is me. I wanted to put up my Instagram this time. I don't usually do this, but I wanted to show people that I haven't posted since 2015. I don't have 1,000 followers. I'm not the best when it comes to social, but for my brands and the advertisers that I work with, I'm a killer. I love this stuff. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you guys coming.
Thank you, Cory.